what they're going to do is it's kind of a speculative reimagining of race for the way mixed people are navigating it. And as I was telling Claudia, she is my mother's complexion, but in the American South, you know, the Americans had the one drop rule, and it reminds me of my grandmother, because you know, if you live long enough, how many of you have had an older, they kind of know when the end is near, when they're about to pass on. My grandmother calls me back home to Mississippi. She's about 90 years old. She wants to see the grave of her husband, my grandfather, we buried back in the 80s. And my grandmother grew up just down the road from this American writer by the name of Richard Wright in Mississippi. So I go down, I say, Grandma, we're going to drive down to Natchez. Drive down to Natchez, we turn outside the community of Natchez where she grew up. And we go down this other little side road. And I pull up and I see a white man raking the yard. And my grandmother said, pull in here, boy. I said, Grandma, why are we stopping here where these white folks live? That dude is a white man, whatever. She said, hush, boy, he go for black. And I was like, so, because in the American South, you find out the legacy of these relationships of people you're unaware of. Because in your own imagination, you just think, I'm just black or whatever, this, that, and the other. But then you find the legacy of the people who live amongst us. Some had passed and chose to stay with their black family. And my mother, who's very, very fair, would often come back and tell what white people would talk about black, unless she let them know. She'd say, hey, I'm African American, and the people would turn very red and embarrassed because it's like she had sat amongst them and listened to what they had to say. And so that is one of the things in the American South. And I'm glad to hear our speakers are from Germany, because I had to tell a friend of mine who is an Afro-German that the Germans shouldn't beat themselves up so much because they got a lot of their bad ideas from the Americans. Because people know they were studying the Americans, how they treated black people, to learn how to treat their own black people or whatever. And so that legacy of mixed ancestry in Europe, and even why it was so fascinating about the legacy of leading up to World War II, the Weimar Republic, where the Germans were very upset about the presence of African soldiers marrying German women, became a big issue, and how some of those children survived that period, and up to this date with the legacy of that and how it's dealt with, and the popular imagination in Germany and different parts of Europe is very interesting. We're looking at that at Carnegie Hall now with the revisiting the idea. This is like the 100th anniversary of the Weimar Republic in terms of its legacy, in terms of creativity and art and culture. And I'd like to hear from, who is it? Claudia is going first to share and come to you in her own way.
Okay. Okay, I'm actually British. My mum's German. My dad's Jamaican. That's my heritage. I'm going to have to swap glasses now because I can't read with those ones. So this piece that I'm reading today, it's half of a story that I've written. And I'm going to read the first half, but I wanted to give it some context before. This piece is dedicated to a specific group of mixed heritage people who were born in the Weimar Republic. That's 100 years ago. I just wanted to just briefly describe the circumstances of their birth. So, as was said, after the First World War, Germany had lost and were required to pay extreme reparations, and this was called the Treaty of Versailles. And part of that treaty required French troops to occupy the Rhineland area of Germany. This went on for more than 10 years, and a percentage of those French soldiers were from the French colonies in Africa and Asia. And over time, some soldiers had relationships with the local German women. And as a result, it's estimated that around between 600 and 800 mixed heritage children were born. The right-wing party that was beginning to get a lot of power at that time believed the French purposely had sent these African troops in to pollute the German race. They saw it as an attack on the part of the French. And they called it the Schwarze Schande, which translates as the black shame. And these children were labelled the Rhineland bastards and became a focal point for fears and resentments. As you can imagine, the future for most of these children was often bleak. Once Hitler got into power in 1933, when they were around early teenage years, many of them were sterilised and many died in concentration camps. There are some extraordinary survival stories, but not a lot is written about these children. So I'm dedicating this story to these children, and the story is called The Flight of the Mischling in 6 movements. And the word Mischling is a pejorative German term for someone of mixed heritage. The Flight of the Mischling in 6 movements. 6th movement. Ansel lands on the ceiling with a gentle bump, limbs wide in surprise, a little queasy, blinking in this new view. The Persian rug which held her feet moments before is now so far away. The bed, scattered with silk cushions and velvet throws, is a painting in the gallery. Look how the pictures on the walls are head over heels. Look at the thick, untouched dust on the top of the wardrobe. And at the centre of it all is the lady of the premises, a momentary mother, although Ansel doesn't call her mother, and this mother doesn't call her Ansel. Ansel calls her what everyone calls her, Frau H., the name as strange as she is, and it demands attention as she does. She is tall and beautiful and formidable. But not from up here. From up here she is none of these things. From up here she looks small and frightened. They stare at each other. Time stops. No, it doesn't. Not for the clock ticking, the dog barking somewhere in the street outside, the car driving by, but it stops for Ansel as she looks about at the ordinary things and hears the ordinary noises, and in this no-time moment, she remembers, and she understands everything there is to be understood about a bedroom that is upside down and the defiance of gravity. Below, Frau Hart is making adjustments too, and the shock and wonder of witnessing a child float to the ceiling like a soda bubble is quickly replaced by the fury that her Mischling would have the audacity to remove, set her in poses, take pictures. Today she dresses her Mischling in a sapphire gown and sticks feathers in her woolly hair. She hangs her fox fur over the child's shoulder and wriggles the long satin gloves onto her hands. There is even a moment of sweetness as they laugh together at the glove's floppy finger ends where the child's fingers don't reach. Then she puts a favourite record on the player and lies on the bed to watch. Ansel knows all the songs. She mimics the singers from the nightclubs that Frau Hart takes her to, copying the dramatic hand gestures and pouting expressions. It was just 3 months ago that, in the blink of an eye, every inch of Ansel's existence was transformed. Once she was always cold and her bed was hard and her stomach was always rumbling and she had to scrub and clean and pray every day for God's grace. But now she is warm and the bed's soft and she can eat all she wants and there's never any scrubbing to do, and God is never mentioned except as a curse in a sudden fit of rage that Ansel has learnt to recognise the signs of, and when it comes and the smile vanishes and the pale skin turns even paler, then it is time to get out of sight. But sometimes when Ansel sings, her heart swells and she forgets her vigilance. The record ends and Frau Hart laughs and claps while Amsie curtsies and twirls in happy circles, her blue skirt spinning around her like a cloudless day, and she declares, "When I grow up, I will sing at the beginning." Ansel immediately realises her mistake, too honest, too open. Frau Hart's mouth is a sharp line, ready to cut. Ansel looks over to the door, but Frau Hart is up from the bed and blocking her exit. "You ungrateful goddamn beast," she hisses. "You think you can live here like a queen and leave me whenever you please? What do you think would happen to you if you left here? I am all there is to protect you from a world that wishes you didn't exist." She picks up a vase from the mantelpiece. "You see this pretty vase? See, I put it here, it stays here. You be like this vase. You will only do what I want you to do. Or maybe you will fall down and break. Pretty things are easy to break. She dashes the vase to the floor. Do I make myself clear? Amsel stares at the broken pieces. Her heart is beating fast, but her mind is beating faster. She is thinking about all the ways that she is like a vase. Small, still, quiet. You put the Amsel vase down and she stays down, whether it is in a cold, damp orphanage or a plush Berlin apartment, whether it's a matter of scrubbing dishes in ice-cold water or sitting still in a fancy restaurant while every face turns to stare. It's the same. The transformation is a lie. And that was when she stopped being a vase and floated to the ceiling. Fourth movement. The night before, they are in the heart of Schöneberg district. This is where the most notorious nightclubs are located. Some venues are blatant, boastful, gushing music and light onto the street. Others prefer to tuck themselves away down dark steps and shadowy doorways, that inviting combination of the mysterious and the seedy. Children aren't allowed in such places, but Frau H. just slips a few marks to the doorman, and no more is said. Her black shimmy dress sparkles with sequins. She wears black collar around her eyes and bright red lipstick that matches her red nails. She loves the colour contrast, the black and red against her milky white skin. But her caramel-coloured Michelin adds the most delicious contrast of all. Tonight she has dressed the child in one of her exotic outfits. Gold waistcoat, silk baggy pants and a large green turban. Frau H. aims to be the queen of wherever she goes. Always the best seat, the best table, the best view of the dance floor, the stage, and a large cushion close by on the floor where her Michelin sits. She simply adores American jazz but won't dance because she doesn't like to sweat. Friends join her, swap air kisses, pet her Michelin, share cocaine. Amsel has come to understand that there are two sets of people in this world. Day people and night people. In the day, men are men and women are women and black people are hardly at all. But at night, when the day people and their children are safely tucked up in their beds, the night people come out to play and all the rules are broken. She wonders what the nuns would make of it. She likes to imagine how they would shake and quiver at the sight of all this sin. Tonight, Frau H. has taken her to the Begin. It's not as large and lavish as some places, but Amsel soon realised its unique attraction. Everyone who works here, all the bar staff, all the band, are black. She recognises some faces from previous club nights. Her eyes can't help but hone in on another brown face whenever they find one, always far away and singular. But here, if she can for just a moment ignore the white clientele, she is surrounded. Her whole body is shaking as she sits on her cushion, transfixed by the man in the snow-white tuxedo playing the clarinet. He stands centre stage while the band plays gently around him. She has never heard such an instrument before. Its voice is a human-bird hybrid on the verge of words that she would understand if only. Tears roll down her cheeks. After several glasses of champagne, Frau H.'s attention is taken up with the delight of a more mature body. She flicks her hand and tells her Michelin to go and play. Amsel knows that Frau H. will not give her a second thought for quite a while. She wastes no time, whips the turban off her head and quickly makes her way through the crowded tables to the bar. The waitresses are busy, back and forth with trays of drinks. Amsel waits and prays for a lull. Her heart skips when the waitress passes close by, winks and says, "Be right with you." When the waitress returns, she beckons Amsel to come behind the bar and into a little tuck-away room full of bottles. There are two more women there, chatting and smoking cigarettes. Their faces light up when they see Amsel. They ask her who she is and how she came to be here, and who is that strange woman she came with. Amsa looks around at their faces, hears their voices. She opens her mouth to answer, but no words come out. They don't seem to mind. They smile and cup her face in their hands and call her Shatsi. So I don't have time for movement 3, 2, and 1. But just to say that they continue to go backwards to the moment of her birth, and that is where she actually flies to. She flies back to herself to give her some solace and to let her know that she's going to learn to fly, so she doesn't have to worry. So.
So hello everyone. Unfortunately technology is not working, but I wanted to give a little bit of context. I had a slideshow that showed faces of futuristic Afro-Germans. And so, or what a futuristic Afro-German could look like alongside this story, where people wouldn't even... The story is called Fassungslos Blutlinie. It means stunned bloodline. Stallgeruch mit Seitentuch. Tante Hilde lived by it. Stallgeruch smells of belonging. Her sister-in-law Oma Frieda never had it. Things got out of hand. The men oily and too soft, and the women too forward deviant. A total collapse before the Second World War. Unordnung, no order. Schamlos, shameless. Oh yes, she was that same stench. Mismatched clothes, messy hair that used to hang curling her hips. Wild, wild. Why couldn't she scrape it back elegantly like herself, not a stray frizz inside? What had Hartmut, her fine brother, ever seen in that odd creature? After the war, when they housed the soldiers, she let them in. Schwarze, the blacks. Look where that got their daughter Esther, an illegitimate mulatto brother with an American name, Georgia. Oma Frieda's finely laid 80th birthday table was laden with a roasted duck, spring vegetables, baby potatoes, and sharp fruits for dessert that would peel off assumptions to the bone. 3 generations of women toasted engraved glasses with maroon wine, including 9-year-old Georgia. Susie, the compassionate family dog, rested under the table. Do you remember, Esther, when you saved your first American chocolate squares for Papa, cupped in your hand, because you wanted him to taste it? Course I do. It had melted and Papa had to lick it off my palm. Who'd given it to you? Jochen. He always brought special treats. Wasn't he your friend, Tante Hilde? Oh yes, from our school days. Yes, that Jochen. Oma Frieda, you never accepted his invitations. No, I didn't, Hilde. He stopped by inconveniently, mostly drunk. Oh, just a bit of fun? Is that so? I heard them singing, smashing shops, beating people. Jochen was there. Oh, a bit too exuberant. A release from the brutal front. What? What did you say in front of Georgia? Esther, please. Not now. A bit of fun, you say? Doing what, Hilde? Oma Frieda, you know full well that not every man in the Wehrmacht was a Nazi. Neither was every man in the Weimar Republic a degenerate. You do well to remember how kind and helpful Jochen was to your family. And then looted diamond jewelry that night, Hilde. How would you know? We saw him, Hartmut and me, right from our window. He released all right. Don't lecture me. We all compromised, did things in the war. Or would you rather not have eaten the chicken, not taken the extra coal, the sugar, the treats? We were desperate and starving. He knew that. That was his leverage. He always inquired about our family, didn't he? So he did. What was wrong with that? Questioned you, didn't he? Hartmut warned me. Hartmut? Warned you? Why should my brother warn you of my friend Jochen? To protect you, Hilde, and our family. To protect me? I think you got that wrong, Oma Frida. I was the one who protected Hartmut. I was the one who gave him blood so he could live longer. It gave you a child. I protected your family. I know, Hilde. He told me everything. And what would that everything be? About you, your family. What are you implying? Unklar. Unclear. You see, Jochen's inquiries were malicious, Hilde. He used the treats to question Esther about us, our friends, our activities. Making friends with you was him watching us. Utter fantasy. I was friends with Jochen before you knew him. We danced together in the big halls before it degenerated. Keine Moral, no morals. And who would want to know about your strange friends anyway? And what activities? Undankbar, ungrateful. Ungrateful, Hilde. Do you know why your most beloved father was against my marrying your beloved brother? Spit it out then, this great secret of yours. Hilde, I am Romani. My parents were from Eastern Germany, and that could have exposed. I knew it. Didn't I just? That explains it. I always suspected something strange about you. Not so, Hilde. How then? You see, Hartmut, your brother, recognized himself in me. Recognized himself in you. There goes that white imagination. One night, he squeezed it out of your father. The Roma blood comes from him. Hartmut discovered that he too was part Roma. So, Hilde, what does that make you? You are lying. Look in the mirror, Hilde. Your olive skin, your then wavy black hair and almond eyes. The old saying in your family you are so proud of, Stallgeruch mit Seidentuch. It's about the horses your family had, the silk scarf, the high status. Your father settled into the city like many of us if we were not chased out. He sold his finest horses, which provided the foundation of your family's wealth. He hid the evidence to survive, hid it almost successfully. How dare you? You will not sully. You see, Hilde, Jochen was desperate to find out who you were, who we were. Did he not write to you repeatedly, asking you the one question that would have permitted him to research our family's ancestry and shut your filthy mouth, you liar, liar? Hilde, we all would have been sent. More than 500,000 Roma murdered in concentration camps. Jochen was a high official looking for more rank. Your association with him was dangerous for us, for you, you dark witch, you vile, you put me in the same category as you. I know my bloodline. Indeed, look around you. It's collapsed. Hilde, hold your breath. There's more. And before you accuse me of being mad, Oma Frida reached into her left dress pocket and pulled out a black, white, gold-framed photograph. With her embroidered serviette, she wiped the glass clear. She placed it in front of Tante Hilde. Immediately, she recoiled. What? What is that? Oh, but look closely, Hilde. What? Whatever for? Can you not get that away from me? Why are you showing this to me? What's that got to do with me? You not see it. What? An ugly woman with the same frizzy mess as you? No, with the same eyes as you, Hilde. Wie bitte? And the same high cheekbones. How dare you? And the chin you're so proud of. Recognize it. Halt deinen Mund. Schamlos witch. Tante Hilde propelled her hand forwards to erase a woman with shiny almond-lined eyes. A large rimmed hat with huge flowers sat on grey thick braids whose ends of small afro balls laid on the frilled collar. On white shoulders encased in black satin, intricate heavy earrings glinted from long earlobes. She exuded wealth. There was a mole on her cheek, and her lined lips would have spoken many languages. Oma snatched away the photograph, turned it around to the inscription at the back. She held it up to her face and in eye shot with Tante Hilde's. Do you recognize the... That's my brother's writing. Exactly. What does it say? Fassungslos. Tante Hilde's finger traced his words. Her brother of hard courage. His love was her protection. She gladly gave him blood. She would have drained herself for him. They cheated death like steel soldiers, her blood in his. It kept him alive for years until our beloved Großmutter, grandmother. Tante Hilde's eyes opened in horror, yet she was drawn in by the words of love. Ha-bi-ba, ha-bi-ba. Habinger, I miss you, Hartmut. Oma Frida turned the card back to the photograph that gazed at Tante Hilde like still waters. The mole too on her left cheek, as it was on George's. For a moment a soft sigh escaped from Tante Hilde's lips, and then she pressed her lips together. Can you see it now? Can you see yourself? Nein. Things never changed that much, did they? These high cheekbones like yours as Esther's. Nein! Her eyes, your eyes, and George's, my eyes, in Georgia, never. Lies. Have you totally lost it? She wouldn't be alive if... Hilde, you wouldn't be alive. You, Roma woman, and African. Haha. Roma, African. My blood is rare. I'm a Red Cross. I have the Iron Cross. My brother, my rare blood. I saved him. Hilde, I tried. I am German, like my mother, from Prussia, Adel, aristocracy. I am also your father's grandmother's daughter and granddaughter. How come, huh? How come I never saw, never met her? Alles gelogen. Because Hartmut, being sickly, was often in her care, and no one knew it. It was the secret. A maid. That's all. Klar. It's clear. What, with that hat and satin? Why do you think you love Egypt so much? When you served there as a Red Cross nurse. Oma reached out her hand to hold Tante Hilde's trembling one Don't touch me. Dirty, get that stinking dog away from me. You're all the same filthy, stinking, old filthy, filthy stench. No, Hilde, not anymore. We are not. We are here and everywhere. Stallgeruch mit Seidentuch, Stallgeruch, Stallgeruch, ha, ha, Seidentuch, ha. Please, have some Mutter. Stall! Aunt Hilda's dry lips continued to babble wordlessly. She held onto the edge of the table. She shook. Everything had changed. Oma Frida looked at her daughter and Esther at hers, as if onto themselves, as they witnessed Tante Hilde's scaffold tumble.
Okay, interesting
Sorry, still at
framing of the imagination of sometimes, as Akiyile, am I pronouncing that? Akila said, how sometimes, I guess in the mirror, I don't know if it translates in the same where the skeletons in our closet come out in unexpected ways in terms of how we respond to them, and or the family secrets of things that we don't want to know about. And clearly, the person who is this character was very uncomfortable with having the truth is right in front of him and wants to deny it. And hearing you go over what they call the Rhineland bastards in terms of what happened to them. I never had the exact number after that, but I know that, yeah, that was one of the big things that was, because we just did a activity around that over in the States talking about what happened in the wake of that, because, and how that traveled across the English-speaking world. Because when I was in the military on a ship serving, there were, I think it was Australia, they used to not let black sailors or Marines get off the ship in Australia. I don't think they could, not until like the 1970s. You know, I was there serving in the 80s, but we heard stories about it from the older members, how this thing circulates the European world or the form of the settler states, some of these behaviors. Would you say, in your scholarship and writing, are there any kind of archival research things that you came across that informed how you think about it at all that you didn't have time to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I think what really shocked me was that I just didn't know about this. It just feels like it's something that isn't really known. Yeah. And I think that, you know, everyone recognises the Holocaust, but there are so many victims of that aren't recognised. And it doesn't surprise me that the black victims aren't recognised, but at the same time, it shocks me. You know, it doesn't surprise me, but it shocks me. That was one thing, and I was just amazed at the idea of these children, and just really thinking about the level that word Fassungslos is so perfect to describe just the complete level of not belonging. You know, that your country won't have you, your parents often didn't get to have you, and the not belonging is so extreme that I just had this idea that if the not belonging gets so extreme that even gravity wouldn't get to hold you either, you know, and the rules of time wouldn't get to hold you. You know, that there is sometimes when you don't belong, there's freedom. There's a freedom to be other, and I've experienced that for myself, and I was just pushing that idea.
The way you were describing about it, I experienced that with, as a serviceman when I went to Australia, how the government there was a policy one time they would take the Aboriginal children from the and put them up for adoption to kind of purify or kind of wean out the Aboriginal people from the population by giving them to white families. And they did the same thing, I know, and the Canadians did that. with the indigenous people there also. And I think it's only been recently that there's been acknowledgement of that, that practice, so much across the, from Europe all the way to Polynesia with the Australians and New Zealanders and the Canadians, you know, how everybody was doing it. And to a certain extent, I know it happened in Asia with, because my older adopted brother is part black, part Japanese. And so the shame of bearing the birth of a mixed race child. And you know, the thing I always tell them is black folk, we just take everybody in, we're responsible for taking in the unwanted. And just say, oh, you black, forget it. We just take it in and put these things together a lot of times. So yeah, that's, and people don't like talking about it or acknowledging that practice. So yeah. Akila, is there anything you want to add about the way you imagine this
Yes,
politician?
I think there are many more Germans who really don't know who they are, who insist on having a particular identity. But if they were to look into their family, I think they really would be shocked. Mm-hmm. And part of it is basically the Sinti, the Romani people. Mm-hmm. That's huge. Yeah. That's very huge because visibly they look different, and 500,000 died in the concentration camp as Afro-Germans did, you know. But and there's also the African blood that is, and I know certainly in my family they circulated a secret nobody quite knew. Maybe Arabic, maybe Jewish, maybe Romani, and somebody had a picture from somewhere. So there was a lot of suppressed history that nobody talked about. But I find it interesting that many members of my family went to different countries where they started to feel at home. So that means even Germans didn't feel at home in Germany, like I didn't. And I found that very interesting because for me it was almost a given that I shouldn't feel at home in Germany, but many of my family members also didn't.
Did either of you find any kind of ways of dealing with it, like humor or satire? And the reason I asked that, I remember the first time I went to France, I heard this word, when I was just walking, I heard this word called Maghreb. And I didn't know what that meant. Someone asked me if I was Maghreb, and I was like, I haven't heard of that country. And then I realized that's a region of North Africa, whatever. And I was like, no. And so, no, I'm American. And how a lot of times African Americans, how we do white Americans, we act like we don't know them. And when we're in Europe, we'll walk, and then I think the humorous part was Cherie Renee Thomas, who's a writer. We're walking in Portugal, and these white Americans are like real messing something up. But they heard us cussing, they said, oh, you're American, because they heard me cussing, calling somebody an MF. And so it's funny, just the satire of how you fit in with certain populations in terms of the features or certain part or region where you travel to, and the humorous situation. And as an adult, I found out about the Roma, their experiences all across Europe in terms of how they're treated. Okay. Any questions from the audience about this? Oh, yes.
I just wanted to thank you both, first of all, so they're both amazing, really amazing, totally captivating. And I have a question for each of you. Claudia, I wanted to know whether your story can be published. We'll get to
I don't know yet.
I have to wait. Yeah. And Akila, I wanted to know how the images influenced the story, or whether was there a kind of connection as you were writing, or there were two separate things that came together?
There were two separate things first that came together. This was an imagination when my mental health was very bad, and I needed to do that. And often that comes from particular trauma from my childhood in Germany. And then this story explains it to me because I wanted to imagine, an Afro future in Germany. And imagine how that may look like from a collective imagination where we don't even know. Are we aliens? Are we a Picasso painting? Are we a hybrid? Are we coming from the darkness of the heart or the darkness, the heart of darkness. So I wanted to play with that, and I felt that the two older women who are talking from almost opposite spectrum but are somewhat connected would have never thought that this could exist, like somebody like me could exist. And maybe that was in the imagination of that Germany. That's me dreaming. Yeah.
Tasha Kelly's written about an Afro-German future. It's called At the End of Dasein. It was published a few years ago in the Black Speculative Arts Movement Art Plus Design book. She'll be here tomorrow. I guess she's the first Afro-German scholar I know that talked about Afro from an Afro-German. It's very well done, and she'll be here tomorrow. If you're here, I can introduce you
Thank
to her.
you.
I think you had your hand.
Yeah, just really delighted and excited to hear you both talking about the Afro-German experience. I kind of knew Afro-Germans from a young age. I studied German, been to Germany first when I was a teenager, and it was quite shocking because even though I'm not Afro-German, I had that experience of people wanting to touch your skin and your hair and being fascinated by you in a uncomfortable, racist, I guess, way. And I went, it's really also important to make more people aware that the Holocaust was not just about Jewish people and maybe perhaps we know about Roman people, but a lot of people are just not aware that it was German people who were black as well. I went to the house in a suburb of Berlin where the people met, the Nazis met to come up with a final solution.
Anzi.
Yeah, Anzi. And it was very difficult to look at exhibition. And one of the images I saw of the scientists who were going to come up with the final solution was of these young black German women who could have been me as a teenager. And it was just, I almost couldn't continue to go around. So as you were saying about the influence of American racism, and then you could see how Germans have definitely experimented on bodies of people like me. But I'm also interested in the aspect of the Weimar Republic because, again, having visited Berlin and seen cabaret and all of that, this period when anything seemed to go and when it was creative and seemed to be open in some ways. And also given the fact that not only did you have the French African troops going in, but Germany also had colonies. There was Togo, Tanganyika, and Tanzania, obviously Southwest Africa and Namibia. And I was wondering how that impacted on racial mixing and how that reflected back into Germany. And also whether in the Weimar Republic, when you have this time of creativity and anything goes, how you can kind of transgress and the boundaries are not, they're more fluid, whether that had an impact, like, in France, you have Josephine Baker going there, in the States you have the Harlem movement, in Cuba you have Afro-Cuban, when white people started to take up the Afro within certain limits and appropriate aspects of the black body and African culture. I was wondering if the Weimar Republic had any elements of that as well, to then be followed by the terrible Nazi cleansing.
What Carnegie Hall is doing right now, because we're doing an exhibition with them, a lot of the luminaries from the Harlem Renaissance movement, like Alain Locke, who was kind of like the dean of the Harlem Renaissance, this is during the time he's kind of replacing the influence of W.B. Du Bois as the new Negro movement comes in. They're influenced a lot by the Weimar Republic and its cosmopolitanism. There's a thriving LGBTQ community in Berlin, the new film and cinematic movement, the Bauhaus movement at the time that was coming in. So that's why when World War II in the 30s and 40s, from the Black American perspective, they really weren't angry at the Germans. When you talk to some of the world, before some of them passed on, the black World War II vets, the Europeans they really didn't like were the Italians. because of organized crime and the mafia in America, so they enjoyed killing Italians. Because they fought with the French First Army, they were segregated units, so the black Americans had to fight with the French and the Senegalese, and they invaded Italy out of Morocco, the regular working class black soldiers, you know, whereas the Tuskegee Airmen, those were the college boys. You know, and so, but the French, a lot of the black troops fought with the French First Army, and they invaded Italy, landed at Anzio, and so that's why some of them said, we weren't really mad at the Germans, but we really didn't like the Italians. And so that's, and talking with, that's kind of the first Pan-African army where you had the Senegalese and this other group called it was African Americans, Senegalese, and this other group out of Morocco that all fought together when they invaded Italy. And yeah, that's a very interesting story. They don't talk enough about. But until recently, when we started the Weimar Project, we didn't know that the Germans, how some of the black Germans survived. They had what they called the human zoos.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, when I found out about that a few years ago, that was kind of shocking in terms of that as a survival.
Yeah, it was often the only way where they could make money because they were actually forbidden to work in their profession.
Yeah.
So becoming Sioux or a circus was
Yeah.
their survival, as you say.
Yeah.
Actually, I thought you might be interested to know that the club